people. Welcome back to another soulful session of Mondays with Mondane. This is where we dive deep into the rhythm of life. Love. I said rhythm of life, didn't I? Okay, and I get to do this again. Love and liberty. And of course, we have to add democracy at all costs. I'm your host, E.D. Mondane, and I'm ready to groove with you to the beats of the week. And tonight, we're diving deep into the history of poets. Those fearless voices who have for generations used their words to challenge systems, reflect societal shifts, and inspire change. And today, we are living in political times that call for the same courage and creativity from the artists of our generation. We have the honor of shining a light on two contemporary poets, Emmett Wheatfall, well, wow, and then Mimi Gurman, who stand boldly at the crossroads of art and activism. Talking about Emmett Wheatfall, let's begin by saying the brilliance of Emmett Wheatfall, a poet whose words have been woven into the fabric of justice and humanity for decades. His poetry has been a profound reflection of American society, particularly the concept of exceptionalism. And his work has garnered national attention. His collection, Our Scarlet Blue Wounds, challenges the American dreams and narrative, exploring the pain and inequities that plague our nation. Emmett is not just a poet. He's a brother, he's a friend, he's a father, he's a butcher, he's a baker, he's an undertaker, but he's a leader who speaks with grace and a prophetic prowess of voice. Ooh, teddy bear. He's tackled the trauma of COVID-19 with extreme prejudice, lest we forget, and brought spiritual depth with the pieces like What a Friend We Have in Jesus. Emmett's involvement in shaping Oregon's literary landscape is profound, serving on the nomination committees for the Oregon Poet Laureates. And he's a testimony to the power of poetry, to the influence, not just hearts, but our systems. He's performed at many key moments of civil rights history, from the 50th anniversary to the March on Washington to memorial services after national tragedies. And he works, as he's asked to, tirelessly over and over and over. Emmett, can poets change the world?
I believe they can. I'm working at it constantly and for a couple of decades now. That person you introduced, the great Greek philosopher Socrates, said, a friend is a second self. So who you described, if that's me, I'd like to meet him.
Okay. Emmett Wheatfall. Emmett Wheatfall. I guess you have to.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Oh, man. Every bit of it's true.
Yeah.
You know, reading you is fascinating. And I want you to talk about this, and we're going to put it up. Well, we're going to put the name of it up anyway. You have a fascinating new video. Tell us about that, because I didn't write the name down.
It's not a video. It's a release. It's a single.
Okay.
I have recorded 4 albums, lyrical, where I speak as opposed to sing, to jazz, blues, and gospel. I have 4 singles. I just released last week. The great jazz crooner Gregory Porter has a beautiful song called Water Under Bridges.
Water Under Bridges.
And it talks about the broken relationships. Bridges burn, but the water continues to flow. I heard it on our local KMHD radio one night, I think about a year and a half ago. And it just stuck with me. And so a couple months ago, I said, I really would like to record that, as a cover of that work. But I wanted to do it differently. I wanted to stay true to poetry, speak the lyric to the music. And I think I achieved that. So they just got released last week. You can get it on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube. It's out there. It's being played all across the country and now internationally. So
wonderful.
I'm excited about that release.
When I listened to it, you sent it to me and I listened to it, and my response to you was simply, wow.
Thank you.
And that's all that I could say. I wanted to create some kind of, jazzy little, but it didn't deserve any other thing but
thank you.
Wow.
Coming from you, that's That's high praise in my book.
You know, talk about what we need in terms of what does poetry do in these times. We know that we need a cradle, and that cradle needs to rock. So tell me how you rock the cradle in these times with poetry.
I think you've asked a very perceptive question. The timing is great. Throughout history, poetry has been one of our oldest art forms. I talk about the troubadours and bards in other parts of the world. They would go through provinces and stuff like that, and they would go and they would recite verse, but they often would have either a stringed instrument or something, and they would recite lyric or verse, not necessarily sing to that. You know, we're living in a time where it seems as if we don't have at least one enigmatic figure where everybody rallies to, you know, maybe like a king or somebody like, you know, Martin Luther King, where people kind of really rally to. We're so diffuse now, diverse in our thinking. So political leaders, it used to be a day where there was a religious leader that people really gravitated to in times of difficulty. But throughout history, people don't know, poets have always, in the times of calamity, been the one that people listen to. People like Pablo Neruda. There was a time in this, you know, with Gil Scott-Heron, you know, or Langston Hughes in the Renaissance era. And I think today, I think poets are the ones that can speak to global issues, local, regional, national issues, and people will lend an ear. I think about Amanda Gorman. I think she was in high school, and I think Jill Biden saw her.
I was just reading with her. I was just reading her today, and it was fascinating. And what she's going through right now, as a matter of fact, is I don't have enough information to talk about it, but you know, perhaps we can explore a little bit later with Mimi how we are going to see poets on the national stage. I want to talk about Mimi German. It looks like German, German, but it's a Hardy German. And she tried to run me through the history of that today, and maybe she'll do it for you, but I don't remember. But I remember her, a fascinating poet, a woman before her times, and an equally powerful voice. She has been named Oregon's Beat Poet Laureate, a title that she has earned through her bold, unapologetic style of confronting political systems and injustices head on. She's been a steady voice for Portland's homeless community, using her poetry as a form of protest against those in power, like the beat poets of the 50s and the 60s, Kurzak and Ginsberg and others. Mimi speaks from the street about the real experiences of people who are often forgotten by society. You got to listen to the sides of the sounds from the sidewalk. And I'm going to tell you something else. Our greatest power is out there in them streets. Her work is revolutionary. Her poems delivered during city council meetings. Wait a minute. City council, excuse me, y'all, I got a poem. And she gets her little guitar out, and she's, no, I'm just, just like what Emmett was just beginning to describe. At these meetings, her acts of defiance and awakening, reminding leaders that art and advocacy are inseparable. Her anthologies, Beneath the Gravel Weight of Stars and Where Grasses Bend, are testaments to the pain, resilience, and the spirit of protest that echo through our nation. Mimi reminds us that poetry is not just about aesthetics, it's about the people. It's about truth. Now, as we reflect on the role of poets in political times, talk to us a little bit about poetry throughout history, and how have they been the voice, just like you, of revolution, and how have they centered themselves as truth tellers, in our times of crisis.
Well, I think that Emmett started to talk about this, that this has been going on since the beginning. We can go back to Egyptian times and find our poets. Mm-hmm. And we can continue, further back and further forward. And always, in the times of upheaval, find the poet who the people are listening to. So I'm really interested now in who's talking about the plight of the world on an international scale with the wars that this country tends to take part in or start, with the poets who are speaking to the injustice of basically everything except rich people in our own country, the poets who are bringing forward the issues of poverty so that they're not scraped under the rug, you know. And it's true, though, what you're saying. It is always the poet who can speak to the power, because the poets recognize when those in power have no power, but the people have the power. And it's the poets who can bring that to the fore. So, for instance, with city council, you ask any city council person, they think they have the power. They're in city council. It's really the people who have the power. We know that. But those people who are in power will continue to believe that they're in power. So who talks the truth? The poet will come forward and say, this is really what's going on.
How has the powers that be tried to interrupt your work deliberately? And what is it that you see as their aim? What is it that is so desperate about your voice that they want it to stop?
Well, I think that any time a person in we'll just call it governmental power, because that's the fake power. So a person in
what kind of power?
Governmental power. Governmental power is just not power.
Yeah.
It's just
fake power.
It's fake power. It's an abuse of the system.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, if you're in the government, there's a really good chance you are abusing power in many ways.
Systemically, and nothing else.
Yeah. So their whole objective, to me as a poet, is to keep a status quo that harms the classes that are beneath the wealthy. So anything, whether it's middle class, upper middle class even, you know, all the way down to those living on the street. And their job is to make us forget that there is anything other than a status quo.
Wow.
That's how I see it. That's how I see it in Portland. That's how I see it in Philadelphia, where I'm originally from. And so again, we keep bringing the reality. It depends on the poet and what their interests are, but mine are bringing that reality into the faces of the people who pretend to have the power to say we actually need to help these people.
You know, when we talk about how poetry heals, and this is something that I think that you both can chime in on, where do we start looking for that greatest place of healing? And it's not going to be with a modern day approach, I don't think. So what is it that we need to start looking for, and how do we begin to center ourselves around poetry that will help bring us out?
To me, healing happens over food. I learned this when I lived in Israel.
Okay.
I learned this through.
You must be black.
Through my. I learned this through my ancestors.
Okay.
And that we all come together at the table, and so when I lived in Israel, we were constantly going to different villages and meeting people there, whether they were Israeli Arabs, whether they were Palestinian, whether they were Bedouin, and eating together. Mm-hmm. And when we eat together, we meet each other. And we meet each other's heart, we meet each other's lives, we meet each other's stories, and we listen and we laugh together. And in those moments, division becomes unifying. Division goes away, and we create unity, and we create community. And it's all through food and coming together in this way. And I do believe that the more we can listen to that, to stop othering and meet each other, whether it's meeting somebody who is suffering on the street, or to imagine meeting somebody who is living in a different country who is suffering, that if we were there, that we could come together, that we could bring food to this table, and food metaphorically, whatever that is, but to the table together.
Yeah. So I think that she just painted a picture of poetic justice.
I think in Western society, I think we have been just nailed with this idea of independency, independent, self-made. Our structures, our yard, our fences, our neighborhood, we create these structures that cut us off from each other.
Yes.
I so love what Mimi was saying. She used food as a catalyst. But if people could just come together and dialogue, presume innocence, and actually hear the divergent opinions and perspective of others without othering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's healing.
Wow. Wait a minute. Say that again. Say it again. Really.
Without othering.
Yeah, the divergence.
Right. The diversity that we come together of thought and perspective.
Without othering.
Yeah, without othering, with presuming innocence.
I get that.
And disarming each other. And you do that around food. I had a thing that I was doing this summer for the first time, what I call poetry on my patio. And I would invite 4 poets, read 5 poets, we'd take 10 minutes apiece. And I told them, it says, as much as I've known you, I said, it will never be the same because you've been in my home. Mm-hmm. You've been on my patio.
Wow.
You've been in my house. We are forever changed by that connection. I may have seen you featured at a reading. I may have been featured or whatever. But once you come into my home, we break bread together. We share poetry together. We talk about that. That's the transformation. And if I can add one other thing, I so like what Mimi was saying. I really do. I think we have a problem with authoritarianism.
Oh yeah.
In government.
Yeah.
We're a
She nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're a republic.
Yeah.
So we send people to Washington D.C. or to our state legislators to act on behalf of constituents. But once they're elected, they say, I'm here to vote my conscience. No, you're here to vote the conscience of your constituency.
Yeah.
So I so love where you were going with that in terms of the problem with governance. It's not communal. It's authoritarian, bordering on tyranny sometimes.
Well, what we're seeing is Martin Luther King's prophecy come to pass. We are the unsettling force. He said that we were going to come to a space where it's no longer going to be about the civil rights of people. It was going to be about the human rights of people. So Black Lives Matter was a wonderful thing, and so many other initiatives to erase racism and et cetera. We're out of DEI. Diversity and equity and inclusion is a thing of the past. So we're out. We're on our own. So we're going to have to pull together on both sides of the aisle. Something fantastic is getting ready to happen now. What we're going to do is we're going to have a collaboration of Emmett Wheatfall and Mimi Gurman. I wanted to say it dramatically, and I lost it. Mimi Gurman. And I'm just going to give them an opportunity to talk and speak poetry and life right in the midst of our table. So what we're going to do is we're going to have Mimi start off and just fuel this energy right here with poetry, and we're going to have Emmett tie it together, and then we're going to end our time with you. Mimi, come on, help us out.
Okay, so one of the things that I talk with people about when I'm reading, and I think that it's difficult for a lot of people to hear this, is that how long do we carry the traumas of our own history before we wake to say, these histories have happened to us, we've carried these traumas, and now we're going to let go of at least some of that fear to open our hearts and our minds into a fearlessness that moves us toward each other, as opposed to keeping the fences up, as you were saying, Emmett.
I like that. I think we've got to get over the cultural divide. I thought when I started in poetry, as an African American who's grown up that way, poetry allows me to travel. I can be on the Yangtze River. I could be in antebellum. I could be in the civil rights movement. I can be an Irish boy in love with an Irish girl. It allows me to, there should be no gated communities that I cannot travel in my poetic utterances. I refuse to let people let me be a DEI poet. I am a poet. And I think you and I, especially you as Oregon's Beat Poet Laureate, I read about you and I was excited about that because in the Beat era, as you and I both know, that's what Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac and those guys did. They just hammered away at those things. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think you're onto something, and I cheer you on in that pursuit.
And the beat goes on. When they won't listen to me, when they won't hear my voice, they'll hear the voice of the poet. And as they lay in wait to take flight to bring us to our place of humanism, to bring us to the table, to dine, and to cross the aisles and say, hey, we're here. I am so grateful for Emmett Wheatfall today and for Mimi German. I want to talk about some of the books of the book that you brought today real quickly. You brought your book, and then Emmett brought his, and they're going to talk about it. Okay, go.
Okay. My latest book is called War Poems.
Lift it up for us to see. There you go.
I'm not sure where the camera is.
It doesn't matter. They'll find you.
Okay. Yeah. So this is called War Poems, Israel, Gaza, the first 100 Days of Carnage, which I started to write on October 7th when Hamas breached the borders and struck Israel. And at the same time, my heart fell to the floor, both for that and the Israelis who were harmed and the hostages who were taken, but also knowing what the trajectory was going to be from Bibi Netanyahu to Gaza. And these poems were written, one poem a day for the first 100 days of the war.
Wow. And this is war poems or war poems. It all depends on what part of the country you're from. And Emmett, you want to talk about it?
You know, I brought for Mimi tonight one of my books called As Clean as a Bone, and the background on it is James Baldwin, one of the great black intellectuals. I was reading an article one day, and in the article, James Baldwin is quoted as having said, when you write a sentence, write it as clean as a bone. And so it has carried my writing. And so I wrote this book. The signature poem, As Clean as a Bone, is in it. It was an Eric Hoffer Award finalist. Fabulous. And the cover was a Da Vinci Eye finalist. So I wanted to give it to her as a gift.
Wonderful.
As my appreciation.
He brought her a gift. He didn't bring me a gift. He just...
I was feeling that when I said it. I knew I was going to get in trouble.
From Langston Hughes in the Harlem Renaissance to Maya Angelou during the Civil Rights Movement, poets have used their art to reflect the times and call for justice. In today's political climate, with so much division and uncertainty, voices like Emmett Wheatfall and Mimi German are needed more than ever. We appreciate them. They remind us of the power of words to heal, to challenge, and to unite. As we stand on the brink of a pivotal election, we must look to poets and artists as leaders who challenge the status quo and inspire us to think beyond the constraints of the present moment that we live in until we need them to call us back into our humanity. 4 actions for the public in the days leading to the election. As we approach this election season, we are in a moment that demands action, people. So here are 4 actions that I want all of us to take. Educate yourselves and others. Take time to understand the policies and platforms, but don't stop there. Engage in meaningful conversations with your families, friends, and community. Poets like Emmett and Mimi have spent their lives educating us through art. Let's do our part to be informed citizens. We need to support marginalized and minimized voices, whether through art, activism, or simply showing up at the polls. We must elevate the voices of those who are too often silenced. Make sure you're amplifying the concerns of marginalized communities and help bring their struggles to the forefront. Now, you have to actively engage. Actively engaging in the political process brings change. Voting is essential, but it's not the only way to make your voice heard. Join local organizations, attend town halls, support candidates who champion justice, and participate in community discussions. Poets, as we've seen tonight, remind us that we have power in our voices. Use yours. Now, my last point tonight as we jump off of here is to foster unity and solidarity. It's a time of division. It's crucial that we build bridges rather than walls. Poets like Mimi and Emmett have dedicated their lives to breaking down these barriers. Now, let's turn the page from the book and work towards uniting people across racial, class, and political lines. Tonight, we've explored the legacy of poets who have dared to speak out in the political times. We're so happy to have you with us.
Thank you.
And we're glad to have you with us. Are you going to come back again?
You
Yes.
bet.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. I am so glad to let their courage fuel our actions tonight. And we're ready to take on the world. Tiger, we've got you by the tail. In the coming days, as we move forward in this critical election, we have power. And you heard Mimi say it tonight. We, the people, are the people. Listen, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors tonight as we close. We're going to do Adorn Electric, who lights up our lives. We have Aunties and Tanties Daycare that take care of your children better than your own mama can. We've got Post Shines, who has the best soul food this side of the Mississippi. And I want to shout out to our producers and our technical staff, Andy, Paul, Robin, and Dion, come together with Neon and Rezon to help us get to Dion. I don't know. These guys are dope, and they make the episode so wonderful. Thank you for reaching out to us tonight. Look for us on Facebook, right there, and then YouTube, and turn on your likes and hit subscribe so that people will know that we're there. We love you, and remember, we've got to keep democracy going, and we've got to keep love abound. Remember your neighbor and do more for them than you do for yourself. This is Edie Montanay, and I'm signing out tonight. Good night. You know, I talk a lot about knowing where you came from to know where you're going. Well, I came from the projects of St. Louis, Missouri. And I ended up into the majestic mountaintops of Portland, Oregon. It's been a wonderful journey, and Lewis and Clark took that journey from St. Louis to Portland, and I took it too. It talks about who I am, and as I'm with you often in in cyberspace or on websites or on the, what do you call it, social media, I want you to know a little bit about me and who I am. This book talks about my fantasies, my failures, my triumphs, and more than that, it talks about the resiliency of being able to continue to go forward regardless of the odds. I'd get a copy. It's called From Maladies to Melodies. And I hope that you enjoy it and give me some feedback. God bless.
Hey, it's time for you to come to Post Shine. Check out that catfish sandwich. Oh my goodness, is that the shrimp po' boy? Man, look at that chocolate chip cake. Man, I need to get over to Post Shines at 8139 North Denver right now because this food looks delicious. Or call if you'd like, 503-978-9000. And don't miss it, you'll be sorry.
In times gone past, we find ourselves making excuses so that people reminded, ooh, I've got to get home and tend to the brand new missus. I need some time alone. Can't just wait until I'm finished texting on my phone.